The saying, "Don't judge a book by its cover," has never found a more fitting subject than the ocean. Its serene surface may seem inviting, but a world of untamed power and mystery lies beneath it. One fateful day, a group of fishermen ventured out into those vast waters, unaware they were about to make the most shocking discovery of their lives. Join us as we recount the extraordinary events that unfolded. On February 1, 2025, the tranquil waters off the coast of Western Australia shimmered under the morning sun. The ocean stretched endlessly in every direction, calm and glassy, reflecting a sky brushed with streaks of pale blue and wispy clouds. A group of Australian fishermen aboard their boat relished the peaceful day. The boat, sturdy but weather-worn, creaked gently with the rhythm of the waves. The men moved methodically across the deck, their tanned faces gleaming with sweat as they hauled in nets heavy with silver-scaled fish. Captain Neil Harris, a burly man with decades of experience on these waters, surveyed the horizon with a practiced eye. The fishing had been good, and spirits were high. Schools of fish darted near the surface, their silvery bodies shimmering beneath the boat. Seabirds hovered above, waiting for scraps. Everything about the day seemed predictable and routine, a testament to the ocean's usual rhythm. Around noon, the atmosphere subtly changed. The wind picked up, creating gentle ripples across the water. The air grew thick, almost electric, as if the sea itself was holding its breath. One of the fishermen, Jack Turner, leaned over the side to reel in a particularly stubborn catch when he froze. His brow furrowed as he stared into the depths below. A massive dark shadow glided beneath the boat, slow and deliberate. At first, the crew assumed it was a whale. Humpbacks often migrated through these waters. But something about the shape was different. It lacked the grace of a whale's rolling motion. Instead, it moved with the predatory confidence of a creature that ruled the deep. The fishermen gathered at the edge, peering into the water. The shadow was growing larger, rising toward the surface. Suddenly, the water erupted. A dorsal fin, jagged and enormous, sliced through the surface like a blade. The creature revealed itself, a colossal great white shark easily over 30 feet long. Its sheer size was mind-boggling, dwarfing even the boat. The thick, scarred body glistened as it moved with unsettling grace. Its black eyes, devoid of emotion, gleamed with primal intelligence. The fishermen stood paralyzed in disbelief. Great whites were common in these waters, but nothing like this had ever been seen before. Comparisons to the ancient Megalodon flashed through Neil's mind, though he knew such creatures were extinct, or so science claimed. The shark began circling the boat, its movements calculated and menacing. Each pass brought it closer, and with every turn, the tension on board grew palpable. The men scrambled to secure their gear, instinctively aware that they were no longer just fishing. They were potential prey. Without warning, the shark struck. It rammed the side of the boat with tremendous force, sending a jolt through the vessel that knocked several crew members off their feet. The impact was deafening, with wood creaking under the strain. The boat tilted dangerously before righting itself. Water splashed onto the deck, soaking the fishermen as they clung to railings and each other. Panic set in. Neil barked orders, his voice steady despite the fear gripping his chest. The crew frantically started the engine, desperate to put distance between themselves and the monster. But the shark was relentless. It rammed the boat again, this time with even more ferocity. The hull groaned, and loose equipment scattered across the deck. The fishermen's hearts raced as they fought to regain control of the vessel. The shark's sheer power was overwhelming. It seemed capable of capsizing the boat entirely. It circled back, its fin cutting through the water like a scythe. The men braced themselves for another impact, but the shark dove beneath the surface instead. For a moment, there was only the sound of the engine and the ragged breathing of the crew. Then, the water exploded once more. The shark breached, its massive body launching into the air. Rows of serrated teeth gleamed in the sunlight before it crashed back down, sending a wave that drenched the deck. Neil gritted his teeth, hands firm on the wheel as he steered the boat toward deeper waters. The engine roared, the vessel shuddering with the strain. The shark pursued its presence, leaving a dark shadow beneath the waves. Each second felt like an eternity as the crew prayed for escape. Miraculously, the boat began to gain speed. The shark's silhouette faded into the depths, and its pursuit was finally abandoned. The men remained on high alert, scanning the water for any sign of the creature's return. But the ocean had returned to its deceptive calm as if the harrowing encounter had never happened. Shaken and drenched, the fishermen gathered on the deck, their faces pale with shock. The air was thick with the scent of salt and fear. Neil's knuckles were white as he gripped the wheel, his mind racing to process what had just occurred. The reality was almost too surreal to comprehend. A shark of that size shouldn't exist, yet it had been right there, attacking their boat with a ferocity that defied logic. As they made their way back to shore, the crew remained silent, each man lost in his thoughts. The encounter had left an indelible mark on them, a reminder of the ocean's untamed power. News of the incident spread quickly once they docked. Experts were skeptical at first, but the damage to the boat and the crew's shaken testimonies left little room for doubt. Speculation ran wild. Was it a freak anomaly, or was something stirring in the depths of the ocean? Comparisons to the Megalodon resurfaced, fueling debates among scientists and thrill-seekers alike. The fishermen, however, had no interest in theories. They had faced a nightmare and lived to tell the tale. The vessel was repaired, but the scars remained, a testament to the terrifying encounter with the predator that had seemingly risen from ancient history. Though the shark was never seen again, its presence lingered in the minds of those who had witnessed it. On July 18, 2023, the tropical beauty of a clear summer day unfolded along the pristine shores of Hawaii. The salty breeze carried the sounds of laughter as a group of friends reveled in their vacation. They had spent the entire morning indulging in water sports and snorkeling in the crystal-clear waters just off the coast. The sun beat down mercilessly, but the ocean offered a cool refuge. Among the group was Tom Walker, a confident 28-year-old with a penchant for thrill-seeking. His fearless nature often made him the center of attention, and today was no different. The group had found a sweet spot near the reef where colorful fish darted through the coral and the water was just deep enough for daring dives. They had dared each other to try increasingly wild stunts. Somersaults off paddleboards, underwater breath-holding competitions, and racing between buoys. Tom, as always, took the dares a step further. His competitive spirit and desire to impress often blurred the line between bold and reckless. As the afternoon waned, Tom stood waist-deep in the water, scanning the horizon. His friends cheered as he prepared to attempt another stunt. The reef marked the boundary between the shallow, tranquil waters and the deeper, unpredictable expanse of the Pacific. Beyond that line was the open ocean, where currents were stronger and marine life was more unpredictable. Local warnings about recent shark sightings hung in the back of everyone's minds, but the vibrant energy of the day made such concerns seem distant and irrelevant. Fueled by adrenaline and the playful dares of his friends, Tom made a decision that would change everything. He announced that he would swim beyond the reef, dive deep, and surface dramatically for a show-stopping entrance. His friends hesitated, urging caution, but Tom was already moving, his strong strokes cutting through the water. The ocean changed beyond the reef. The vibrant hues of the coral faded into darker, more mysterious blues. The gentle lapping waves became choppier, and the seafloor dropped away into an abyss. Tom's breathing quickened as he pushed himself further, driven by a mix of exhilaration and stubborn pride. He dove deep, his body slicing through the water like a spear. The world around him became silent, save for the rhythmic thrum of his heartbeat. As he reached the depths, Tom's lungs burnt, and his muscles strained. He fought the pressure and twisted his body to ascend. The sunlight above shimmered like liquid gold, beckoning him back to the surface. His chest heaved as he kicked with all his might, his vision blurring at the edges. When he finally broke through the surface, gasping for air, he was disoriented and momentarily blinded by the glare of the sun. Then the ocean shifted. A sudden, unnatural stillness enveloped the water around him. The rhythmic waves that had accompanied him all day seemed to pause as though the sea itself was holding its breath. Tom's instincts sharpened, and a cold knot of fear formed in his stomach. He knew enough about the ocean to recognize when something was wrong. A dark shadow glided beneath him, large and deliberate. His heart slammed against his ribs as realization dawned. The tiger shark moved with eerie grace, its striped body blending seamlessly with the water. At nearly 12 feet long, it was a predator built for swift, lethal attacks. The shark was drawn by the splashing. Tom's desperate attempt to tread water had triggered its primal hunting instincts. Without warning, the shark surged upward, its jaws parting to reveal rows of serrated teeth. Tom kicked frantically, but it was too late. The impact was brutal. The shark's powerful jaws clamped onto his leg, sending a shockwave of pain through his body. Tom screamed, the sound swallowed by the vastness of the ocean. Blood billowed into the water, staining the blue with crimson tendrils. The shark thrashed, dragging him beneath the surface. Instinct took over. Tom clawed at the water, his hands flailing in search of anything to grip. The shark's teeth tore through muscle and sinew, the agony blinding. Adrenaline surged through his veins, dulling the edges of the pain as he fought for his life. He kicked at the shark's snout with his free leg, knowing it was one of the few vulnerable spots on the predator. The shark released its grip momentarily, startled by the blow. Tom seized the opportunity, kicking with all his strength to propel himself upward. His vision flickered, and his body screamed in protest, but sheer willpower kept him moving. He broke through the surface once more, gulping in precious air. His friends had seen the attack from a distance. Panic rippled through the group as they waved frantically to nearby boats for help. The sound of engines roared to life as rescuers raced toward Tom's location. The shark wasn't done. It circled back, its dorsal fin cutting through the water like a blade. Tom's strength was fading, his movement sluggish. He could feel the weight of his injuries dragging him down. The shark lunged again, but this time the roar of an approaching boat sent it veering away. Strong hands grabbed Tom, hauling him onto the boat. He was pale, trembling, and drenched in blood. His leg was a mangled mess, the flesh torn and exposed. The crew worked swiftly to stem the bleeding, applying makeshift tourniquets as the boat sped toward the shore. Tom drifted in and out of consciousness, his body racked with pain and shock. The world around him became a blur of faces, voices, and flashing lights. Paramedics were waiting at the dock, and he was rushed to the hospital. The aftermath was a sobering reminder of the ocean's raw power. Tom underwent multiple surgeries to save his leg, and though doctors managed to stabilize him, the physical and emotional scars would remain. The attack made headlines, a cautionary tale about the dangers of pushing boundaries in unpredictable waters. For Tom and his friends, the memory of that day would forever be etched in their minds. A day that began with laughter and thrill-seeking, but ended in a harrowing struggle for survival. The ocean, beautiful and vast, had shown its merciless side, and Tom had paid the price for his reckless dare. The salty breeze of the South Carolina coast swept through the air, thick with the smell of seaweed and warm sand. The water was calm, shimmering under the bright August sun in 2024 as Kyle Roberts and his 10-year-old daughter Emily waded in the shallow surf near Hilton Head Island. It was the final day of their week-long vacation, and Kyle wanted to make the most of it before they returned to their busy life in Charleston. Emily splashed ahead of him, her laughter blending with the sound of waves breaking gently along the shore. Her blonde hair, damp from the ocean spray, clung to her freckled face as she grinned at her father. The beach was lively that afternoon, dotted with umbrellas and sunbathers. Families played frisbee on the sand while children built sandcastles that crumbled under the weight of the tide. Boats dotted the horizon, their sails bright against the clear sky. Kyle, a seasoned swimmer and former lifeguard, kept a watchful eye on Emily as she floated on her back, her small arms paddling rhythmically. He had always loved the ocean and had taught Emily to respect its unpredictable nature. But despite his cautious instincts, neither of them had any reason to suspect what lay hidden beneath the shimmering surface. Farther out, unnoticed by the beachgoers, a shadow glided silently through the water. It was a great white shark, nearly 12 feet long, patrolling the coast in search of prey. The predator's powerful body moved with eerie grace, its dark dorsal fin slicing through the water. Sharks rarely ventured this close to shore, but hunger had drawn it into the shallows. Kyle stood waist-deep in the water, scanning the horizon as Emily swam a few feet ahead. He was about to call her back when a sudden violent splash shattered the tranquility. His heart seized as Emily's body disappeared beneath the surface. For a split second, disbelief froze him in place. Then instinct took over. Adrenaline coursing through his veins, Kyle lunged forward, his legs churning through the water. He reached the spot where Emily had been, the water now swirling red with blood. Panic clawed at his chest, but he forced it down. He had to find her. His hands plunged into the water, groping blindly until he felt a small, thrashing form. Emily's head broke the surface and she gasped for air, her face contorted in pain. Before Kyle could process the relief of finding her, a massive shape erupted from the water. The great white shark, its eyes cold and unfeeling, lunged toward them, jaws agape. Kyle's instincts as a father overrode every other thought. With a primal roar, he pushed Emily behind him and met the shark head-on. The impact was brutal. The shark's powerful body slammed into Kyle, knocking him off balance. He thrashed wildly, kicking and punching at the predator. His fist connected with the shark's snout, momentarily stunning it. Seizing the opportunity, Kyle grabbed Emily and pulled her toward him, his arms trembling with the effort. The shark circled back, its dorsal fin slicing through the water like a blade. Blood clouded the water around them, thick and metallic. Emily's screams were drowned out by the chaos. Kyle's lungs burnt as he fought to keep them both afloat. He could feel the shark's presence like a dark weight beneath them, its movements deliberate and relentless. Desperation fueled his strength as he propelled Emily toward the shallower waters. The shore seemed agonizingly distant, the beachgoers frozen in stunned horror. A boat had spotted the commotion and was speeding toward them, but Kyle knew they didn't have time to wait. The shark lunged again, its jaws closing around his left arm. Pain exploded through his body as teeth tore through flesh and bone. Kyle's scream was raw and guttural, but he didn't let go of Emily. Summoning every ounce of strength, he twisted his body, using the momentum to dislodge the shark. Blood streamed from his mangled arm, staining the water a deep crimson. The predator released him, momentarily dazed by the sudden movement. Kyle seized the chance, pushing Emily forward with his good arm. The boat was closer now, its engine roaring as it cut through the waves. A crew member leaned over the side, extending a rope. Kyle's vision blurred from pain and blood loss, but he focused on one thing: getting Emily to safety. With a final desperate push, he lifted her toward the boat. Strong hands grabbed her, pulling her aboard. Kyle's body sagged in the water, his strength nearly gone. The shark, sensing weakness, circled back. As it surged toward him, a sharp crack echoed across the water. One of the crew members had fired a rifle, the bullet striking the shark just behind its dorsal fin. The predator thrashed violently before disappearing into the depths. The boat crew hauled Kyle aboard, his body limp and bloodied. Emily clung to him, her sobs racking her small frame. The boat sped toward the shore where paramedics were waiting. Kyle's breathing was shallow, his skin pale from blood loss. Emily's leg bore deep gashes, but she was conscious and clinging to life. On the beach, chaos erupted as emergency responders worked frantically to stabilize Kyle. Emily was rushed to a waiting ambulance, her injuries severe but treatable. Kyle's condition was far graver. Despite the paramedics' best efforts, his heart faltered during the frantic ride to the hospital. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily sat in a hospital bed, her leg bandaged and her eyes red from crying. Her mother held her close, whispering words of comfort. The doctors informed her that Kyle had succumbed to his injuries shortly after arriving at the hospital. His heroic actions had saved Emily's life, but at the cost of his own. News of the attack spread rapidly, capturing national attention. Kyle Roberts was hailed as a hero, a father who had made the ultimate sacrifice to protect his child. The beach where the tragedy occurred was temporarily closed, and marine biologists were called in to study the shark's behavior. In the days that followed, Emily's recovery was slow but steady. The physical wounds would heal, but the emotional scars ran deep. The memory of her father's final moments haunted her, but she found strength in knowing that he had given his life to save hers. Kyle's legacy lived on as a testament to courage, love, and an unyielding bond between a father and his child. Although the ocean would forever hold the memory of that fateful day, it was also a place where Kyle's bravery would be remembered. The icy winds of Antarctica swept across the deck of the research vessel as Mark Stevens adjusted his wetsuit. It was March 12, 2024, and he stood at the edge of the boat, gazing out at the pristine, frigid waters. At 39, Mark was an experienced diver, having explored some of the world's most remote and challenging underwater environments. However, this trip off the coast of Antarctica was unlike any he had ever undertaken. The desolate beauty of the landscape, towering glaciers and endless sheets of ice created an eerie but mesmerizing atmosphere. The dive was part of a guided expedition to observe the region's unique marine wildlife, including the playful seals that thrived in the cold waters. The group had been briefed extensively about safety protocols, and although leopard seals were mentioned as a potential threat, attacks were rare. These sleek predators, with their long, muscular bodies and powerful jaws, were usually elusive, preferring to keep their distance from humans. Mark had brushed off the warnings, eager to capture footage for his documentary project. As the boat drifted to a stop near a cluster of icebergs, the crew signaled that it was time to enter the water. Mark pulled his mask over his face, adjusted his oxygen tank, and plunged into the freezing depths. The cold was a shock, biting through his suit and sending a shiver down his spine. He steadied his breathing, focusing on the surreal beauty around him. The water was a crystalline blue, with shafts of light piercing through the surface. Schools of fish darted among the ice formations, and a group of seals glided gracefully in the distance. Mark kicked his fins, moving closer to the seals. They were curious, circling him with playful energy. He marveled at their agility, capturing footage with his underwater camera. The scene was serene, almost otherworldly, and he felt a deep sense of connection to this remote and untouched environment. Time seemed to stand still as he floated among the wildlife, completely immersed in the experience. But nature's tranquility can be deceptive. Out of the corner of his eye, Mark noticed a sudden disturbance in the water. The seals scattered, their playful demeanor replaced by frantic movements. His instincts sharpened, and he turned just in time to see a dark torpedo-like shape slicing through the water toward him. A leopard seal. It moved with astonishing speed, its sleek body cutting through the water like a missile. Mark's heart raced as he realized the animal was not veering away. Instead, it was locked onto him, its powerful jaws open to reveal razor-sharp teeth. The The seal's eyes gleamed with primal intensity, and Mark knew he was in serious trouble. He tried to backpedal, but the seal was already upon him. With a force that knocked the air from his lungs, it clamped down on his arm. Pain exploded through his body as the teeth sank into his flesh, piercing through the wetsuit. The water around him turned red, clouded with his blood. The seal thrashed violently, shaking Mark like a rag doll. The sheer power of the animal was overwhelming, and he struggled to maintain control. His camera was torn from his grasp, sinking into the depths as he focused solely on survival. Mark kicked wildly, trying to free himself, but the seal's grip was unrelenting. Instinct took over. He reached for his dive knife strapped to his leg and managed to unsheath it despite the pain. Gritting his teeth, he stabbed at the seal's side, the blade barely penetrating its thick skin. The seal flinched but did not release him. Desperate, Mark slashed again, aiming for its sensitive snout. This time, the seal let out a burst of bubbles and loosened its grip just enough for Mark to wrench his arm free. His lungs burnt as he fought to reach the surface. Blood trailed behind him, and he knew the seal could attack again at any moment. The cold gnawed at his strength, and his vision blurred from a combination of pain and panic. Every stroke felt like a monumental effort, but sheer willpower drove him upward. Just as his strength began to falter, strong hands grabbed him. The dive crew had spotted the struggle and pulled him onto the boat with swift urgency. Mark collapsed onto the deck, gasping for air. His wetsuit was shredded, and deep gashes crisscrossed his arm and chest. Blood pooled around him, staining the pristine white of the deck. The crew worked frantically to stabilize him, wrapping his wounds in makeshift bandages. The pain was excruciating, but Mark's mind was still in survival mode. He couldn't stop shaking, whether from the cold or the shock, he didn't know. The boat's engine roared to life as they raced back to the research station. The journey back was a blur of agony and chaos. Mark's thoughts flickered between disbelief and gratitude. He had faced death in the jaws of one of Antarctica's apex predators and lived to tell the tale. The seal's attack was a stark reminder that the wilderness, for all its beauty, was a place where survival instincts reigned supreme. By the time they reached the station, a medical team was waiting. Mark was rushed to the infirmary, where doctors worked tirelessly to treat his wounds. The gashes on his arm required dozens of stitches, and his chest bore deep puncture wounds. Despite the severity of his injuries, the doctors assured him he would recover. News of the attack spread quickly, making headlines around the world. The footage recovered from Mark's damaged camera provided a chilling glimpse of the encounter, though much of it was obscured by the chaos. Experts weighed in on the behavior of the leopard seal, speculating that it had felt threatened by Mark's presence near the seals it was likely guarding. In the weeks that followed, Mark's recovery was slow but steady. The physical scars would remain, but the experience had left an even deeper impression on his mind. He had always respected the power of nature, but this encounter had driven home a lesson he would never forget. In the wild, humans are merely visitors, vulnerable and fragile in the face of nature's raw and unyielding force. Mark eventually returned to the water, though with renewed caution and respect for the creatures that inhabited it. His story served as a reminder to divers and adventurers alike that even the most experienced among them are not immune to the dangers of the wild. The icy waters of Antarctica had tested him in the most brutal way possible, and he had survived. The sky was a flawless expanse of blue on August 14, 2021, as David Thompson's family enjoyed a peaceful fishing trip off the coast of California. The 8-year-old had been excited about the trip for weeks, his energy infectious as he tugged at his parents' arms, eager to cast his first line. The boat rocked gently on the calm Pacific waters, the horizon stretching endlessly in every direction. Seagulls wheeled above, their cries blending with the soft lapping of waves against the hull. David's parents, Mark and Emily, smiled as they watched their son lean over the edge of the boat, peering into the sparkling water. His small fingers clutched a fishing rod, his eyes wide with wonder every time a silvery flash darted beneath the surface. They had anchored in a secluded spot known for abundant fish, far from the crowded coastline. It was supposed to be a day of joy, a break from the routines of suburban life. The ocean seemed tranquil, almost idyllic, as the family settled into their afternoon. Mark adjusted the lines while Emily rummaged through the cooler for snacks. The salty breeze carried the faint scent of seaweed, and the sun warmed their skin. David giggled as a school of tiny fish swam near the boat, their shimmering bodies catching the light. Everything about the day felt perfect, until it wasn't. It began subtly. A shadow, barely noticeable at first, glided beneath the boat. Emily noticed it but dismissed it as nothing more than a large fish. The water was clear, revealing the sleek outline of something moving with purpose. Mark, focused on untangling a fishing line, paid no attention. David, however, was captivated. He leaned farther over the edge, his hand reaching toward the water as though he could touch the mysterious shape. Then the shadow resurfaced. A massive dorsal fin slicing through the water with chilling precision. The unmistakable sight of an 18-foot great white shark sent a jolt of fear through Emily. Her breath caught in her throat as the predator circled the boat, its movements deliberate and unsettling. Mark's face paled as he recognized the threat. At first, the shark appeared curious, its black eyes gleaming as it studied the vessel. It swam in wide arcs, disappearing briefly beneath the waves before reappearing on the opposite side. The family remained frozen, unsure of what to do. Sharks were not uncommon in these waters, but attacks were rare. Still, the sheer size of this predator was enough to ignite a primal fear. Seconds stretched into an eternity as the shark's circling grew tighter. The boat creaked under the shifting weight of its passengers as they instinctively moved away from the edges. David, oblivious to the danger, remained at the side, fascinated by the creature's sleek form. Mark's instincts screamed to pull his son back, but the moment he moved, the shark made its decision. Without warning, the great white launched itself out of the water with terrifying force. Its powerful tail propelled it skyward, water cascading from its glistening body. The sight was both majestic and horrifying, a monstrous display of raw power. Time seemed to slow as the predator soared through the air, its jaws wide open, revealing rows of serrated teeth. David barely had time to react. The shark's massive jaws clamped down on his leg, the force yanking him off the boat and into the churning water. Emily's scream was drowned by the thunderous splash as the shark and child disappeared beneath the surface. The serene afternoon had transformed into a nightmare in an instant. Mark lunged toward the edge, his heart racing with adrenaline and terror. The water, once clear and inviting, was now stained with a spreading cloud of red. Emily collapsed to her knees, her hands trembling as she clutched the side of the boat. Time fragmented into chaotic flashes. A thrashing dorsal fin, splashes of crimson, and the heart-wrenching realization that their son was gone. Desperate, Mark dove into the water, his instincts overriding all logic. The salt stung his eyes as he searched for any sign of David. The shark's massive shadow loomed beneath him, circling with a predatory grace. Blood clouded the water, obscuring his vision. He kicked harder, ignoring the burning in his lungs, but there was no trace of his son. On the boat, Emily fumbled with the radio, her fingers slick with sweat and seawater. Her voice cracked as she tried to call for help, but static filled the line. She glanced back at the water, her heart shattering as Mark resurfaced, gasping for air and empty-handed. The weight of the moment crushed her. David was gone. The shark disappeared into the depths, leaving only blood in the water. The water grew eerily calm as though nature itself mourned the tragedy. Mark clung to the side of the boat, his breaths ragged and choked with grief. Emily reached down, pulling him aboard with trembling hands. They collapsed onto the deck, their bodies shaking from shock and devastation. When the Coast Guard arrived, there was little to be done. The search for David's body yielded nothing. The ocean had claimed him, leaving only emptiness in its wake. News of the attack spread quickly, sending shockwaves through the community. Experts speculated that the shark had been drawn by the family's movements and splashing, a tragic case of mistaken identity. In the days that followed, the Thompsons were consumed by grief. Their home, once filled with laughter and joy, became a silent monument to loss. The vibrant energy that David had brought to their lives was gone, replaced by a void that could never be filled. The image of the great white shark haunted their dreams, a relentless reminder of the fragility of life. Authorities issued warnings to fishermen and recreational boaters, urging caution in the waters off the coast. Marine biologists studied the incident, seeking to understand the shark's behavior, but for the Thompsons, no amount of research or explanation could undo the tragedy. The ocean, once a place of wonder, had become a symbol of their greatest sorrow. Mark and Emily eventually returned to the coast, standing on the same beach where their son had excitedly boarded the boat. The waves lapped gently at the shore, indifferent to their pain. As they stared out at the horizon, they knew they would carry David's memory with them forever, a bright, beautiful soul taken too soon by the merciless depths. On June 2, 2024, the morning sun glinted off the shimmering waters of the Florida coast. Chris Matthews, 31, an avid surfer with years of experience riding waves, arrived at his usual spot before the beach filled with weekend crowds. The salty breeze rustled through his hair, and the rhythmic crash of waves echoed in the background. It was a perfect morning for surfing. The tide was high, and the swells rolled in with a steady rhythm that promised a series of clean, rideable waves. Chris stretched on the sand, his lean, muscular frame taut with anticipation. He loved these early hours when the world felt quiet and untamed, with only the ocean as his companion. The water beckoned to him, glistening under the morning light. He strapped on his ankle leash, grabbed his surfboard, and jogged toward the waves, leaving footprints in the wet sand. The first few waves were smooth and exhilarating. Chris carved through the water, effortlessly, the rush of speed beneath his feet filling him with joy. The ocean had always been his sanctuary, a place where the chaos of life faded, and only the rhythm of the sea mattered. After catching a particularly satisfying wave, he paddled back to the lineup, glancing around at the other surfers scattered across the water. The horizon stretched endlessly, calm and inviting. As he adjusted his position, waiting for the next swell, something caught his attention, a flicker of movement beneath the surface. Chris assumed it was a school of fish or perhaps a harmless sea turtle gliding through the depths. He thought little of it, his focus returning to the waves forming in the distance. The water was clear, and the sun cast shimmering patterns across the ocean floor. Without warning, the tranquil scene shattered. A dark, powerful shape surged from the depths with terrifying speed. The tiger shark, nearly 12 feet long, moved like a torpedo, its muscular body slicing through the water. Chris barely registered the blur of motion before searing pain exploded through his right arm. The shark's jaws clamped down with crushing force, serrated teeth slicing through flesh and bone. The impact knocked Chris off his board, plunging him into the churning water. Salt stung his eyes and filled his mouth as he thrashed in shock and agony. The shark shook him violently, its powerful body twisting with relentless ferocity. Blood billowed around them, turning the water into a murky crimson cloud. Instinct took over. Chris kicked and struggled, desperate to free himself from the predator's grip. The shark's jaws released momentarily, only to clamp down again, this time on his left arm. Pain radiated through his body as he fought with every ounce of strength he had left. The water churned with chaos, bubbles, and blood, obscuring his vision. Adrenaline surged through Chris's veins, dulling the searing pain. He knew he had to get to the surface, but the shark's weight dragged him downward. His lungs burnt for air as he clawed at the water, his legs kicking frantically. The shark thrashed again, ripping into his flesh with brutal efficiency. Somewhere in the chaos, Chris's board floated nearby, bobbing uselessly on the waves. He managed to wrench himself free for a split second, his body screaming in protest. Blood streamed from his mangled arms, and shock threatened to pull him under. The surface seemed impossibly far, but Chris fought against the darkness creeping into his vision. Just as his strength waned, another figure cut through the water, a nearby surfer who had witnessed the attack. The man paddled furiously toward Chris, his face a mask of determination. Grabbing Chris by the shoulder, he hauled him onto his board with a surge of strength born from sheer desperation. The shark circled beneath them, its presence a menacing shadow in the blood-streaked water. Chris's rescuer paddled with all his might, the weight of two bodies slowing his progress. Waves crashed around them, each one threatening to knock them back into the predator's territory. Chris's vision blurred and his body went limp, the loss of blood sapping his strength. Somehow they made it to the shallows, where other surfers and beachgoers rushed to help. Hands grabbed Chris, lifting him onto the sand as someone tore off a shirt to use as a makeshift tourniquet. Blood soaked the beach, pooling beneath his shattered limbs. Chris's breathing was shallow, his face pale and slick with sweat. An ambulance arrived within minutes, its sirens cutting through the chaotic scene. Paramedics worked quickly, stabilizing Chris and stemming the bleeding as best they could. His consciousness flickered, the world fading in and out. The last thing he saw was the concerned faces of strangers hovering above him before darkness claimed him. At the hospital, doctors fought tirelessly to save Chris's life. The extent of his injuries was severe. Both arms had been mauled beyond repair. Surgeons amputated what remained, their focus on preventing infection and stabilizing his condition. The operation was long and grueling, but Chris pulled through. When he awoke days later, groggy from pain medication, the reality of his situation began to sink in. The ocean, once his sanctuary, had become the place where his life had been irrevocably changed. Grief and shock weighed heavily on him as he struggled to comprehend the loss of his limbs. But beneath the despair flickered a spark of resilience, the same determination that had kept him fighting in the water. The attack made headlines across the country, sparking renewed debates about shark conservation and beach safety. Experts analyzed the incident, noting that tiger sharks were known for their aggressive behavior and opportunistic feeding patterns. The community, shaken by the brutal encounter, rallied around Chris, offering support and encouragement as he faced the long road to recovery. Despite the trauma, Chris's spirit remained unbroken. Rehabilitation was grueling, filled with pain and frustration, but he tackled it with the same determination he had shown on the waves. Friends, family, and even strangers reached out, offering words of encouragement and financial support for prosthetic limbs. Months later, Chris returned to the beach, not to surf but to feel the sand beneath his feet and hear the soothing crash of waves. The ocean still held its mysteries and dangers, but it also symbolized resilience and renewal. Chris's scars were a testament to his strength, a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable terror, survival was possible. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden hues across the water, Chris stood tall, his heart filled with gratitude. Life had changed, but it had not ended, and like the ever-moving tide, he would find his way forward.